She kicked open the door like she owned the place, a clipboard in one hand, smug smile in the other. HOA inspection, she announced. But the second she saw the man sitting across from me, quiet, sharp-eyed, in a coat too expensive for these woods, her voice died. I didn't flinch, because she had no idea she just busted into a private meeting with the state attorney general. And by sunrise, her whole empire of rules and fear would come crashing down. The peace before the storm. Ethan Cole, a soft-spoken environmental policy consultant, retreats to his modest lake cabin for solitude and to prepare for a high-stakes meeting. Nestled in a quiet cove, the cabin is his sanctuary, far from city noise and neighborhood politics. The local HOA, however, has been increasingly aggressive about enforcing obscure bylaws, especially under the watch of a particularly zealous board member, Margaret Whitmore, known informally as HOA Karen by residents. Ethan has ignored her repeated notices about unapproved wood stains and non-compliant garden edging, choosing peace over confrontation. But as he sets up for a private meeting with the state attorney general, who's come incognito to discuss a major environmental investigation, the last thing he expects is a knock, then the door swinging open. The uninvited intrusion. Margaret, armed with a clipboard and a self-righteous glare, barges into the cabin without permission. Claiming she's conducting a compliance wellness check due to an anonymous tip about structural violations, she freezes mid-sentence when she sees Ethan seated across from a distinguished man in a tailored coat. Ethan calmly introduces the visitor as a guest involved in a confidential state matter. Margaret, flustered but undeterred, insists the HOA has jurisdiction over all properties and demands to inspect the premises. The Attorney General watches silently, his expression unreadable. Tension thickens as Ethan stands, voice steady but firm. "You violated my privacy. Leave. Now." The reckoning begins. After a terse exchange, Margaret storms out, vowing to escalate this to the full board. Ethan apologizes to his guest, who simply nods and says, "I've seen this kind of overreach before. Over coffee." The Attorney General reveals he's been gathering evidence of systemic abuse within certain HOAs, power grabs disguised as community governance, privacy violations, and intimidation tactics. He tells Ethan, people like her don't think they'll be held accountable. But they're wrong. Ethan, initially reluctant to get involved, begins to reconsider. He's spent years avoiding conflict, but now something stirs a quiet resolve to protect not just his cabin, but others who've been silenced. Echoes of the past. Flashback: Ethan's childhood home, where his immigrant parents faced unfair housing discrimination. He remembers the helplessness when rules were weaponized against them. That memory ignites a deeper purpose. Back in the present, he starts quietly collecting stories from neighbors: elderly couples fined for hanging bird feeders, young families harassed over paint colors. Margaret, meanwhile, doubles down, sending threatening letters and rallying HOA loyalists. But Ethan doesn't lash out. Instead, he documents everything: timestamps, photos, voice recordings with consent, building a quiet but ironclad case. His calm demeanor masks a growing determination. The town hall showdown. The HOA calls an emergency meeting after Ethan files a formal complaint. The room is packed. Margaret takes the podium, painting Ethan as a rule-breaking outsider disrupting community harmony. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Then Ethan stands. No shouting, no drama. He speaks plainly about privacy, respect, and the difference between leadership and control. He shares one neighbor's story, then another. And then, unexpectedly, the Attorney General enters, now in official capacity. He announces a statewide review of HOA practices, with Ethan's case as a key example. Gasps fill the room. Margaret's face pales. The quiet victory. Margaret is suspended from the HOA board pending investigation. The state launches a task force on homeowner rights. Ethan doesn't celebrate with fanfare. He sits on his porch at dusk, watching the lake ripple under the moonlight. Neighbors begin to visit, not with complaints, but with thanks. One brings a pie. Another offers to help replant the garden Margaret had ordered removed. The cabin, once a target, becomes a symbol of quiet resistance and dignity. Ethan realizes that standing up doesn't require anger sometimes. It just requires truth, patience, and one brave moment to say, "This stops here." Ripples on the water. Months later, Ethan receives a letter. A new state bill, inspired in part by his case, is being introduced to protect private property rights from overreaching community associations. He smiles, folds the letter, and places it beside a photo of his parents. On the lake, a heron takes flight graceful, undisturbed. The wind carries the scent of pine and water. Peace returns, but it's different now. It's not just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of justice. And for the first time in years, Ethan feels truly at home.